I got the message in late November. It was from my old college friend Jake, someone I hadn't seen in over 3 years. He told me he was planning a winter hiking trip in Alaska with a small group and asked if I'd be interested. There would be 3 of us, Jake, his friend Brandon, and me. I'd always wanted to see Alaska, the idea of endless snow, forests untouched by time, and sky that looked like it went on forever. It hooked me instantly. I said yes the same night. Jake's plan was simple: fly into Anchorage, drive north, and hike part of the Denali backcountry for 5 days. He said he'd found a lesser-known trail from a wilderness forum. Barely anyone uses it, he wrote. No tourists, just silence. We landed in Anchorage in early December. The airport was freezing and gray, and the sun barely skimmed the horizon. By the time we left the city, it was already dark, even though it wasn't that late. The further we drove, the more the world around us turned white and silent. We stopped for gas in a town that felt half abandoned. There was one guy at the station, older, heavy flannel, missing 2 front teeth. He saw the hiking gear in our truck bed and asked where we were headed. Jake told him the trail name. I noticed the man's expression change instantly. He didn't say anything at first, just stared for a few seconds. Then he said, "Stay away from the ridgeline. No matter what happens, don't follow voices. And don't go near the old cabin if you find it." We laughed a little nervously. I thought he was messing with us. But he didn't smile. He just repeated, "If you hear something out there, it ain't your friend." That night we camped near the edge of the trail. The woods around us were dead silent. No animals, no wind, no distant cars. Just cold air and the crunch of boots on ice. As I lay in my sleeping bag staring at the roof of my tent, I remember thinking, something about this place feels wrong. Quiet isn't supposed to feel this heavy. I told myself I was just tired, just cold. But deep down, I think part of me already knew we shouldn't have come here. We started the trail early the next morning. The snow was deeper than we expected, but the cold kept us moving. It was quiet, the kind of quiet where even your breath sounds too loud. No birds, no wind, no planes overhead. Just the crunch of our boots and the occasional creak of ice-covered branches. About 4 hours in, we found it. It wasn't on the GPS. Jake was checking his phone when he stopped walking. Through a break in the trees, there was an old log cabin, small rotting roof half caved in. It looked abandoned for decades. There were no footprints, no paths, just snow piled up around it like it had grown from the ground. Brandon walked up to it first. The front door was leaning off the hinges. He peeked inside, then waved us over. There was nothing unusual inside, just dust. Old wood, a rusted stove, and the frame of a broken bed. No furniture, no signs of life. But the 3 of us agreed. Something about it didn't feel right. "I don't like this," I said. Jake smirked. "It's just a bunch of wood and dead spiders, chill." We didn't stay long. Jake took a few pictures. Brandon joked about spending the night in it, and we moved on another mile before setting up camp near a frozen creek. The sun dipped below the trees by mid-afternoon. Temperatures dropped fast. By nightfall, we were wrapped in layers around the fire, eating freeze-dried meals and telling dumb stories. None of us brought up the cabin. It was like we'd all silently agreed to forget it existed. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up. My tent was cold, colder than it should have been. I heard something outside. Soft, slow footsteps crunching in the snow. I held my breath and listened. At first, I thought it was one of the guys, but the steps didn't move like someone walking. They shuffled, paused, then shuffled again, not toward the tents around them. Then came the tapping. It sounded like someone tapping wood with a stick. 3 times! A pause, then again. Tap, tap, tap. I slowly unzipped my tent just enough to peek out. Nothing. The fire was out, our bags were untouched. But the tapping was louder now. It was coming from the trees, from the direction of the cabin. I thought maybe I was dreaming. I closed the zipper and sat up, trying to calm my breathing. That's when Brandon whispered from the next tent over, "Are you hearing that too?" I didn't answer, because I knew he was hearing it. And I knew we had made a mistake by finding that cabin. The next morning was wrong from the start. There was no sunlight, just a dull gray haze hanging over the snow like a dirty sheet. The trees looked closer somehow, denser, darker. I stepped out of my tent, already cold to the bone, and saw Jake crouched by the fire pit. "Have you seen Brandon?" he asked. I shook my head. Brandon's tent was empty. His boots were gone, but his bag was still there, half unzipped, with his flashlight sitting right on top. No signs of struggle. No note, no footprints, just an untouched layer of fresh snow around the campsite. He probably went to take a leak, I said, trying to sound casual. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. We waited an hour, called his name in every direction. Jake even fired his flare gun once, just in case Brandon was lost nearby. Nothing. That's when we realized something worse. Our GPS wasn't working. Both our phones showed the same thing. Blank maps, no signal, no saved coordinates. Jake's compass spun slowly in circles. We packed up and tried retracing our steps toward where we thought the trail had been. But the forest didn't match what we remembered. It was like the trees had shifted. The path we hiked yesterday, flat open, marked by a ridge, was gone. Everything ahead of us now sloped uphill, steep and unfamiliar. I don't remember any of this, I said quietly. Neither did Jake. That afternoon it started snowing again. Thick, slow flakes that fell straight down with no wind. We kept moving, but it felt useless. Like the forest was stretching. By evening, we set up camp again. Still no sign of Brandon. Jake barely spoke. I think he was trying not to panic. I didn't mention it, but I'd started hearing something strange while we walked. Every now and then there was this faint clicking noise behind us, like two stones tapping together. It always stopped when I turned around. That night I didn't sleep. I lay still in my tent listening. Sometime past midnight I heard footsteps again, quick this time. Moving around the camp, pacing, then I heard it. Brandon's voice. It was faint but clear. "Hey, guys!" I shot upright. "Jake," I whispered. "Do you hear that?" He was already unzipping his tent. The voice came again, closer. "Guys, it's me. I'm cold. I'm hurt. Help." But something was wrong with it. The words came too slowly, like they were being spoken one syllable at a time, and then they repeated the exact same words, the exact same rhythm. "Guys, it's me. I'm cold. I'm hurt. Help." Jake stood frozen outside his tent, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. I grabbed his arm and whispered, "That's not him." And right then the voice stopped. Not faded, not walked away. Stopped mid-word. The forest went silent again, and we stood there, listening to a silence that felt alive. That's when I realized whatever took Brandon wasn't done with us yet. We didn't talk much the next morning. Jake was pale, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept at all. I didn't ask if he heard the voice again. I didn't want to know. We packed up quickly and moved. We weren't following a trail anymore. We were just moving, trying to put distance between us and whatever had spoken in Brandon's voice. Around midday, the wind picked up. Not strong, but sharp, like it was whispering through the trees instead of pushing them. That's when I first saw it. A figure, far off, maybe 100 yards between the trees. Standing perfectly still, tall, not human, not exactly. Too thin. Its limbs looked wrong, like they were stretched or cracked. I blinked and it was gone. "Did you see that?" I asked. Jake didn't answer. I started noticing other things too. Trees carved with deep clawed markings, piles of small stones stacked in threes, a long string of animal bones tied together and hanging from a branch like some kind of wind chime. None of it was there the day before. Then Jake stopped walking. He was staring ahead into the woods. I followed his gaze. There, just past the trees, was Brandon, standing. He wasn't moving, wasn't calling out. Just standing, half hidden behind a pine tree. His clothes were the same, but his posture was off. Arms loose at his sides. Head tilted just slightly too far. "Brandon!" Jake yelled and started running. I grabbed his shoulder hard. "Wait, listen!" Brandon didn't respond. He didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Just stood there. Then he stepped backward, not turned, not walked, just one slow, unnatural step backward into the trees and vanished behind them. We ran the other way. We ran until our legs gave out and the air burned in our lungs. When we finally stopped, Jake doubled over, panting. "I saw him," he said. "I saw Brandon." "No, you didn't," I said. "That wasn't him." Jake looked at me, confused and terrified, like he hadn't let himself believe it until just then. Night fell faster than it should have. The snow reflected none of the light. Everything was just darkness and shadows. We didn't set up a tent. We just huddled by a small fire, backs against a rock wall, trying not to look into the trees. Sometime past midnight, we heard it again. Footsteps, slow, dragging footsteps on snow. Not approaching, circling. Every once in a while, they'd stop. And then came the whisper. Not a shout. Not even speech. Just the sound of someone breathing words that didn't make sense. and laughing. A slow, quiet, broken laugh. Jake clutched the hatchet he'd kept on his belt since the start. I was holding my hunting knife so tightly my knuckles were white. But we never saw anything that night. Only the feeling that something was out there, just past where the firelight ended, watching. By morning, something inside us had shifted. We stopped pretending this was just a search and rescue. We stopped calling Brandon's name. We moved like hunted animals, silent, paranoid, and desperate. The snow had stopped falling, but the air felt heavier, like the forest itself was pushing against us. The trees were so close together now that barely any light made it through, even though it was mid-morning. Then we started seeing the carvings. The first one was on the side of a dead tree, 3 jagged triangles stacked like a pyramid, scorched into the bark. The edges weren't chipped or cut. They were burned, clean and deep. We found more every mile or so, same symbol, same pattern, always facing the same direction.
Leading us.
Jake said we should follow them. I said we absolutely shouldn't. But we had no signal, no compass, no landmarks. Everything looked the same except for those symbols. So we followed. Around midday, I started hearing it again, the voice. At first, just my name, quiet, drawn out. There's Matt. It didn't come from ahead or behind. It came from everywhere. From the trees, the snow, even the air in my lungs. I didn't tell Jake. But then it spoke again. Help. I'm cold. Matt, it's me. Help. The same broken sentence. The same tone from 2 nights ago. I stopped walking. My mouth was dry. I wanted to believe it was just in my head. But then Jake turned around and said, "You heard it too, didn't you?" We didn't move for a long time. Eventually, we came to a clearing. In the center was a stone altar, weathered, moss-covered and cracked down the middle. On it lay pieces of clothing, a torn parka, a boot, something that looked like a scarf soaked in frozen blood. Jake recognized the parka. It was Brandon's. Then we heard a sound I will never forget, a second voice. It sounded just like Jake, but it wasn't coming from him. "Matt," it said. He stared at me, pale. "I didn't say that," he whispered. Then we heard it again. "Matt, Matt!" "It's me. I'm hurt." Coming from the trees behind us. And it didn't stop. It kept talking. Same tone, same speed. Word for word. Over and over. A perfect loop of Jake's voice, repeating from behind the trees. Again and again. Like a tape recording of a dying man. We ran. The voice followed us. Always behind, never closer. Still speaking. Still mimicking. And just before dusk we found it. Another cabin. Not old and broken like the first. This one was newer. Still weathered, but intact. Door sealed. Windows fogged. No smoke, no lights, but recent. We should have kept walking. But we were too tired, too cold, and too desperate to care. We opened the door, and inside the walls were covered in carvings. The same triangle symbol. Hundreds of them. And scrawled in something black and dried across the largest wall were the words, "It's not him." The second cabin was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silent, this was something heavier. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. We stood in the doorway for a long time before stepping inside, unsure if we were walking into shelter or into a trap. The first thing that hit me was the smell, faint but metallic. Old blood maybe, or rust. The cabin was a single room with a narrow loft above. A small stove in the corner unused. Broken lanterns. A bed frame with no mattress, but it wasn't empty. The walls were what made it different. Every plank was carved with the same symbol, the 3 stacked triangles. Again and again. Like someone had scratched them in over and over until their hands bled. Some were neat, others erratic. On one wall, the symbol had been repeated so many times it formed a swirling pattern. Like a tunnel made of shapes. And in the center, the words, "It's not him." They were written in large, uneven letters. Some of them shaky. One was smeared, like the writer had tried to wipe it off but gave up halfway. Jake walked to a table in the corner and picked up a journal. Only a few pages had writing. "It doesn't kill them. It keeps them. It copies them. He came back last night. Looked like my brother. Even talked like him. But he didn't blink. It's in the trees, watching. It waits until you're alone. Then it makes you believe. Don't answer. Don't follow. Don't trust the voice. I don't know if I'm writing this or if it is." Jake put the journal down and stepped back. "We shouldn't stay here," he said. "This isn't a place for people. I agreed. But outside, the wind was howling. Night was closing in fast, and something deep in the woods had started calling again. This time it wasn't Brandon's voice. It was my own. Jake. It's me, Matt. I'm cold. Help, please. It was distant but clear. We stood frozen, and then Jake whispered, "What the hell is happening?" Neither of us moved for a long time. I could feel my chest tighten with every breath. The voice repeated itself, from a new direction, louder, then again from behind the cabin, and then from directly above us in the loft. Jake. It's me, Matt. I'm cold. Help, please. We didn't speak. We didn't run. We couldn't. Then something creaked above us, slowly, one step at a time, like someone or something was walking in the loft just above our heads. I reached for the knife in my belt. Jake gripped the handle of the stove's fire poker. And then, silence. Nothing. No more footsteps. No voice. Just a long, awful silence. And then the door slammed shut behind us. The door slammed shut so hard that dust rained from the ceiling. Jake spun and tried the handle. It didn't budge. The lock hadn't clicked. It felt like it had been sealed. Upstairs, something shifted. Slow, deliberate footsteps, no longer hiding, no longer mimicking. Just walking, not pacing, not wandering. Coming down. Jake and I backed into the far corner, weapons in hand, eyes fixed on the dark staircase to the loft. But nothing came down. The steps stopped halfway. Silence again, the worst kind. Then something leaned just far enough for its shadow to stretch down the stairs. It looked like a man, but its proportions were wrong. Its head was too long, its arms too low, like someone had traced the outline of a human, but didn't quite understand the shape. It never made a sound. Jake and I didn't move. We didn't breathe. Then the shadow recoiled like it had been yanked backward. I didn't wait. I ran to the window, grabbed a chair, and smashed it through the glass. The cold air hit me like a wave of knives, but it didn't matter. We dove out and hit the snow hard. We didn't look back. We just ran. The forest didn't look the same anymore. It was shifting around us. Trees in places they hadn't been. Slopes where flat ground used to be. The symbols carved into bark flashed by on both sides. We were running in a direction we hoped was out. That's when I heard it again. Jake's voice. Behind me. Matt, slow down. But Jake was in front of me. I stopped cold. He turned back. What's wrong? Then we both heard it. Jake's voice again, just off to the left. Then another, Brandon's voice. And then mine. All three of our voices overlapping, tangled, echoing through the trees. We bolted. Somewhere along the way, Jake fell. I turned and tried to go back, but he shouted, "Keep going." I hesitated just long enough to see something crawling out of the tree line behind him. It wasn't running. It didn't have to. Jake looked back at me one last time, and then it pulled him under the snow like he'd dropped through a crack in the earth. I ran until my legs stopped working. I woke up days later in a hospital in Fairbanks. A hunter had found me lying on the edge of a frozen service road, frostbitten, half-conscious, mumbling nonsense. Search and rescue didn't find Jake or Brandon, or either of the cabins. GPS data said we never left the main trail. My phone was blank, photos gone, no signal logs like someone had wiped it clean. Nobody believed me, but I know what I saw. Sometimes at night I still hear it. A voice that sounds like mine calling from outside the window. It's me. I'm cold. I'm hurt. Help. But I don't answer, because whatever's out there, it isn't me, and it's not done looking.